Welcome to the Being in Medicine show. I'm Corey Anderson.
And I'm Jeff Mars.
Together, we aim to revolutionize the healthcare experience for patients, clinicians, and all team members by unlocking the transformative power of human potential.
Each week, we explore with you and our guests how embracing our authentic selves and choosing who we are being can affect the nature of healing, leading to profound transformations in our lives and in the lives of those around us.
Join us today on a journey through self-discovery and empowerment as we unlock the human potential within each of us.
Welcome to the Being in Medicine show, where we explore the deep connections between mind, body, spirit, and leadership in healthcare and beyond. Today's guest is someone whose journey will truly inspire you. Bina Bendale, a board-certified nurse coach, dynamic speaker, and founder of the Nurse Coach Business Association. With 18 years as an emergency room nurse and as a mother of 3 special needs children, Bina understands resilience, compassion, and leadership at the deepest levels. She is the creator of the Silent Struggle Solution, helping HR teams build healthier, more connected workplaces, and has even shared her insights on NBC and TEDx stages. Get ready to explore how healing goes beyond the bedside into workplaces, families, and communities. Let's warmly welcome Bina Bendale.
Thank you guys for having me here. It's such a pleasure.
Welcome, Bina. We're so happy to have you.
Yeah.
We're excited about the conversation today.
So am I.
Yeah.
We've had a chance to get to know you for a while now, you being one of the founding members of the movement of bringing being into medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And you're a nurse coach, and you've got really quite a background in being in medicine already before we ever met you.
Yes, I have.
We've learned a lot from you. Share with us and our audience, what exactly is a nurse coach?
So a nurse coach, we are a board certified. We actually use our nursing license, and we use a holistic approach into medicine. So it is preventative healthcare or taking naturopathics or just taking the holism of a person back into being in medicine, which goes back to the name of the show. And it really is bringing back that love, that compassion, that communication that is solely missing nowadays in healthcare.
Absolutely.
And we are really going back to the roots of what is your lifestyle? Are you sleeping right? Are you eating right? Where's your stress levels? And if we're able to really adapt to those type of changes and do it in a healthy way, then we can reverse certain chronic diseases. We are able to reduce emergency room visits. We are able to reduce a lot of the congestion, especially in the mental wellness and the mental illness area. And a lot of the times it's because they're not being heard. A lot of these patients are not being heard or valued or supported. And that's really where nurse coaching does come back into play, is we're really giving that back to the world.
That's fantastic.
Who are the typical clients of nurse coaches?
Anyone and anyone. So nurse coaches are not just here to coach nurses. We actually are, each individual nurse coach is its own avenue. We call ourselves nursepreneurs. We are entrepreneurs that are nurses, and the nursepreneurs are out there, and it's really what our driven is. So whether it's diabetics, whether it's generational trauma, whether it's parents with special needs, whether it's something specifically with Down syndrome, type 1 diabetics, it's really wherever the passion is for that particular nurse, and then going down that lane on what they truly want to embody. But at the end of the day, all of us really want the same mission, to have healthcare go back to what it was 20, 30, 40 years ago, and to really bring back that root of empathy, compassion, and love, and really, really hearing what the patient in front of you is really actually saying, and can we change it with lifestyle? Can we change it with decreasing stress versus unfortunately, the world now with, oh, just take this medication and just do this diet or do that diet. And there's no real true education around that. And what we're really trying to do is like stating like, hey, I understand there's a problem. And if you need medications, please take the medication that you need. But also learn that maybe it's stress induced, maybe it's lifestyle, maybe it's something else that's causing it. And let's get to that root cause and then really transform that so you don't have to be on these medications for a lifetime.
Wow.
Oh, that's
What do you have
great.
to say about that, Corey?
I just love what nurse coaching brings to the healthcare field, because it's just taking ownership of those diseases and teaching patients the role that they have, right? To own the condition that their body has, and then step into how they can really transform that and live a more productive, healthy lifestyle. And I love the role. I know quite a few nurse coaches, nurse entrepreneurs, nursepreneurs, and I love that phrase. I'm gonna bring that back more often. But I just love what you guys are offering to healthcare, and it's such a unique area that you have been carving out and living in that it's exciting to hear, to be honest with you. And so it feels a very natural space for nurses to take on that role of that holistic space. I mean, everyone in medicine has that, but it seems to come a little more natural to nurses. Do you find that to be the case in your experience?
It does, because remember, and no offense to any physician that's listening, nurses are at the bedside. We're
Right.
with them for 8, 10, 12-hour shifts. We're talking to the families. We're talking to the people on the phone. We're the ones navigating the system to advocate for these patients, and or we're in their rooms, like
Right.
when they're in their most vulnerable states.
Yeah.
So it really does make a sense when nurses are really trying to take this a holistic approach and stating like, yeah, I understand you have these conditions, but also it really makes sense because we bond with them. We already
Yeah.
know how to do that. I can walk into a room and I can have instant trust just by stating that I'm a nurse, and people will automatically just spill their life stories out with me, which I take and I love because they feel like they are being heard in that moment.
Yeah.
Because we do take the time out. We are able to, maybe not so much nowadays, but we were able, to sit down with them, have a conversation, maybe feeding them, maybe while we're starting their IV, talking about, their day, what's going on, or
Absolutely.
really settling their nerves when they're really, really scared.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. Great segue into the conversation of how nurse coaching has a ripple effect throughout the healthcare industry when people are engaged with what it means to be a nurse and to be a nurse coach.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Because it goes back to compassion. It goes back to deep listening.
Yeah.
It goes back to active listening,
Yeah.
right? With what that patient is stating at that given time, giving them that space, and then communicating their needs of like, maybe they don't want this particular surgery today. Maybe they
Right.
want to wait a day or 2 days, right? And
Yeah.
then some physicians might be like, no, I only have surgery today, and this is the only time I have. And it's really bringing that advocacy back of just like, well, let's hear this patient out.
Right.
What is their rationale? Instead of going back to what we're telling them what to do, because that's what healthcare a lot of the times is, right? We tell patients what they need to do, how they need to live, when they're doing things, when they take their meds. There's a lot of telling.
Yeah.
And I think with nursing and with nurse coaches and in like just being in medicine, it's really taking that holism back where it's like, why don't we listen to them? What is their rationale? Maybe there's something at home and you're able to wait a day or two, or maybe they're wanting to try other things in their head. I mean, there's a time and a place. Yes, I have to push. Yes, you have to push, of course. But also just reminding ourselves that maybe I've had this happen to me multiple times in the ER where they're like, can we just wait 12 hours because they have to get their dog situated or they have to go home and tell child care. Like they're just not ready. And it's like, if they're able to get some of their house stuffs coordinated, then they're going to come to the hospital feeling more relieved, feeling less anxiety. They're going to feel more things. And all that anxiety prep to that particular thing. It's like, give them the 10 hours,
Right.
because if they come back with less anxiety, their recovery's less, the anesthesia will go better, their
Right.
healing process will be, and then they're not like getting up going, I gotta go, I gotta go, I gotta
Yeah.
go, and they're just like, no, I know things are settled.
Yeah.
And it does give the recovery process a little bit more. So I think when we're going
Yeah.
back to the empathy part, it really does shine with just like, if they need that 15, 20 an hour, whatever it is to get themselves accumulated. Like even now for myself, like I have 3 children, they all have special needs. If something happens to me, I'd
Right.
have a plan. Like
Right.
I'm gonna be like, who's gonna watch my children? Like you guys can't just take me in.
Mhm.
I would have to coordinate, or I'd have to leave against medical advice, go home, figure my situation out, and then come back unless it's emergent, right?
Absolutely.
So there are times and places where I think once we just listen to what the patients are stating, it really does become huge, because that's the part of medicine that I think is missing nowadays, is
Yeah.
that listening of what the patient actually needs and what the patient's actually saying.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. There's a lot of work to be done in that space. Mhm.
Yeah.
You said earlier that every nurse coach has his or her own passions
Mhm.
and they can pursue that passion. What is your passion as a nurse coach?
So I am multifaceted, but the main one is talking about the silent struggles at home. And that, in my world, what that means is I do have 3 children. They all are on the spectrum, all have ADHD. So they all have some sort of special condition, and really navigating those silent struggles and bringing that to the workplace. Um, I really do believe that if I'm able to help in their home holistically, whether it's them asking for help, maybe they're not yet want to ask for like meal prep services or something that can just kind of alleviate some of their stress. They're able to show up better, one, for their children or whoever is in their household. And
Mhm.
2, they're able to show up stronger at work, because that anxiety or that overwhelm, we're not doing a double negative, right? Because we have a lot of stress at work some days. And at least at home, if we feel that we have a lot of it at least verbally expressed, or have a game plan on those situations, it really does help with the work environment. But a lot of it is helping the parents with those special needs really feel the release of guilt, shame,
Yeah.
remorse. Like, what's wrong with me? What did I do wrong? Especially women. Like, did I do something in utero? What is this? Like, where did this come from? Because nowadays autism is a little bit more spoken about,
Yeah.
but not like it was 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
You have a mission that you spoke about on your TEDx. Can you
Mhm.
share some of that with us?
Yeah. So having children with disabilities is a challenge within itself.
Mhm.
Now, when we are in our home, we have what we need, right? Or we adapt to what we need, particularly when we have to use the restroom. And out in public, what happens is that goes away.
Yeah.
And there is no adaptations to like bathrooms specifically for kids that have noise sensitivity, scent sensitivity, light sensitivity, or just in general, overall, they're just sensitive to different stimulations. And my TEDx was around having sensory supported bathrooms where, we're not walking through these hurricanes or the hand dryers and the faucets going up and
Mhm.
down, the toilets flushing all around us. And then the one handicap bathroom that's all the way at the very end, right? And we're standing waiting for it, because we all know women love the biggest bathrooms. Why do they make them small? That's another topic. But it's like, and then it becomes a problem, right? And
Right.
then generally, I have to do this by myself, because my husband, who's 6'2", very handsome, if he walks into a ladies' bathroom, they're gonna like, what's this peeping Tom doing around here, right? So
Right.
that means I got to take 3 kids to the restroom, stressed out. They're flipping out about the toilets. They're doing different things. They're going in 3 different directions, and it takes us 20, 30, 40 minutes. And now I just want to go home.
Right.
Like, I'm ready to go home.
Yeah.
I'm like, my husband's like, so now what? I'm like, I'm done. I want to go home. Like, I don't know what you did. I just did a workout. Like,
Right.
I'm done, you know? And it's not that he can't go into the men's bathroom. He can, but it's different. It's not as closed, you know?
Yeah.
So exposures can be an issue. And then that's also another trigger. I can't bring my daughter in there because she'd be like, what is going on here? Right. At least in females, it's all closed doors.
Right.
So it is a challenge. It's a huge challenge. And so one of my bigger missions is to get these sensory supported bathrooms where it's like a family bathroom, but the lights are dimmer. There's a chair. Maybe there's an adult changing table. Because a lot of the times, like, I don't think a lot of people realize like how much supplies we bring to the bathroom, and then we have to put it on the floor. And, you know, it's a lot more complicated than I think a lot of people realize, because as a normal, typical human being, when we go to urinate or defecate or whatever we need to do, we just go, we do our business, and we walk out as if it's nothing, because it's a natural process for us.
Yeah.
For other parents, you know, you don't see a lot of people in a wheelchair going into the bathrooms. You don't, because it's not made for them. Because there's no room. Like, even if you were to go, like, there's no room, or they have to wait 15, 20 minutes to get into that one stall. And then even when they're in that one stall, it's kind of like, you know, it's very challenging.
Absolutely.
And yeah, a lot of people, when I asked this question somewhere else, I said, when was the last time you saw somebody that is severely disabled, like, honestly using the bathroom? And a lot of people are like, we don't. I said, because it's not made for us.
Yeah. Well, I want to acknowledge you for the mission, and your TEDx talk is absolutely wonderful. And like most people, you know, I'm moving through life and unaware of some of these challenges that are presented. So I just want to acknowledge you for the work that you're doing and to lead that movement. And my question is, you know, that's a personal daily interaction that you're having in your own life. How does your role as a nurse coach bring those things together? How does that interact with your nurse coach life and the mission of that particular passion of yours?
It's the advocacy, right?
Yeah.
Because I've learned how to become such a big advocate for my children.
Yeah.
That also, I noticed, is in my business as well. So a lot of my clients, a lot of my business, like even the firms and businesses that I'm in, they all know, like, there's going to be a ride or die behind you.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it becomes, is that advocacy part, where it's just like, if you're not aware, how do we make you aware? Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like everyone needs to be, we're not even asking for like a silent eye or anything like that. All we're just stating is just like 1% of the world's population is autistic.
Yeah.
That's not even including cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, diabetics.
Yeah.
All this trisomial diseases. We're not even including any of that.
Right.
Just autism alone is 1% of the world's population.
Wow.
And why are we not focusing on that? Why are we not focusing on it? And it's because a lot of people, like the studies have shown, now if we're going at everything else, that may have gone to 10, 15, maybe 20% of the population. And yet statistics have shown people only focus on the 80%.
Right.
It's the 20% that's forgotten. And I call us sometimes the forgotten souls.
Yeah.
And yet we're the louder ones. And yet we're the ones that, you know, in education, in certain areas, it's like, oh, well, just cut out from special ed.
Right.
Oh, we don't need this. It's too expensive.
Right.
And I'm like, well, then you go to a bathroom that's dirty, that has shit on the table and comes up, and you tell me if that's appropriate.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, no, I can't do that. I said, but you expect me to do this.
Right.
Like, do you see how it's not like comes up, but it's that advocacy part where it's just like, if your level of expectation is here, why is our level of expectations right here? Like, they understand these.
Yeah.
There's still a human behind that.
Absolutely.
Regardless of what your information is. But I'm like, I can talk to a normal, typical person and they can be completely arrogant. or completely brilliant.
Right.
Right. And just because somebody's shy doesn't necessarily mean they're bad. And just because somebody's very outspoken doesn't mean that they're good.
Right.
So it's like, where's the judgment, and how are you to judge a child with disabilities or that's nonverbal, especially in my world,
Yeah.
and make those assumptions that, oh, he may or may not understand, or she doesn't get this, or their meltdowns are tantrums. And, it's like
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of different things with that in conversations,
Absolutely. Well, it's amazing work that you're doing, and you are creating awareness through speaking it. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
It's interesting how you said, I just picture that happening, where one might see a child having a meltdown, going sensory, and without the background or the knowledge, it just looks like they're having a tantrum. And why don't you just tell them to shake themselves out of it? So that is a combination of judgment and misunderstanding. How do you bring understanding to people?
It's really hard, to be honest, because as healthcare, you see it even in the ERs, you see it even in the hospitals. They don't understand. We don't have sensory supported bathrooms in hospitals. So it's just like, oh, just use the toilet, or they'll put a commode in there, and they're like, here you go, use this.
Yeah.
So, a lot of it is awareness. A lot of it is just speaking up. A lot of it is like, giving them that advocacy talk of like, well, how would you like to do that? Going back to a real life situation again.
Yeah.
And once I kind of start that conversation and I flip the roles, right?
Mhm.
I said, look, I'm not looking for special treatment. All I'm stating is that, would you want that to occur in your world? And the minute I make that mirror image, a lot of people, they're sitting there. Some of them will be okay. And some of them's like, well, it doesn't bother me, so I don't understand. And
Right.
that's on them too. And that's on their judgment.
Yeah.
But it's the world where out of sight, out of mind. And if I don't feel it, I don't see it. And if I don't see it, I don't do it. It's the kind of the mentality, right?
Yeah.
It's
Creating
hard.
awareness.
It's just the awareness now. And that's why a lot of organizations, a lot of like Autism Speaks, Autism Parenting, like there's a lot of organizations that I do get involved with where it's all about that understanding. Like I truly believe if people understood even like how important a bathroom could be, like that would allow, or even a sensory room could be, that would allow us to go to games. That would allow us to go to not feel the pressure of going into a hospital, because that alone is very challenging for parents with special needs, right?
Absolutely.
So it's just the awareness behind it, and for these governing factors to be like, just remove it's like you would make a whole new building. Why can't you just fix the bathroom?
Yeah.
It's like, put the money in, like you're ready to build a whole new administrative building or a new building here or a wing. It's like, all we're asking for is just fix the bathroom that's there that has less noise or dimmed lights. Like just alter it. Like there's go to Home Depot. It will cost you maybe a couple $100.
Right. Yeah.
But yet they don't do it. And
Right.
it's hard.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, go ahead. No.
Well, I was going to ask, so similarly with the nurse coaching world, right? How do you create awareness around the real impact that having nurse coaching in medicine, in healthcare, or programs around nurse coaching embedded into organizations? How do you create awareness around the impact of that?
Just keep talking.
Keep talking. What types of impacts have you seen?
I've seen a lot. So I've been embedded now into 4 different organizations here in California. And generally, like the employee assistant program is used anywhere from like 1.5% to 2%, company wide.
Yeah.
And what I've seen is that with Silent Struggle Solutions in particular, that I have an increase about 5 to 8% of the entire company.
Wow.
Which is double, if not triple, the amount of people who are using the assisted employee programs. And the number one reason is because the fact that 1, I'm a nurse, 2, it's confidential, and 3, it really does bring that morale back, because you're learning about yourself and you're learning about the triggers that are occurring for you, and or we're working on communication. Right? If it is something that is triggering you, we encourage the fact of like, well, then let's go have an agreement with your boss. Let's go have that heart-centered conversation. And a lot of times people don't want to do it because they're triggered by something from their childhood or high school, or I don't know, an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend said something that they're like, I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to really go in. So it's really going down to that root cause. But honestly, it's just the awareness behind it is the more people feel comfortable, the more they're going to want to learn from themselves. And the more they want to learn about themselves, the more they realize that, hey, this company actually values me.
Yeah.
This company actually is like cares. Like they understand I'm going through a lot. They gave me a nurse coach to help me settle whatever I'm feeling in a healthy way. And they're still showing up. Like they're still going to work. They're still doing things. And they see a huge percentage that's like people that were wanting to go on disability, which again, they were overwhelmed. Something's happening at home. And after working with that particular client, right, they're like, oh no, it's not as chaotic as I thought. Right? We're able to talk it through. Then once we're talking it through, we come up with the structure or come up with an accountability or goals, right? Then they're like, it's not as bad.
Yeah.
Okay, I can go to work and I can do this because it feels better for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the biggest distinction right now.
Yeah. So yeah, you help them, you create the scaffolding for them to get back to production or back to performance or back to, creating their experience, right, in medicine. And so that's great that you're giving them that scaffolding to build on, and then helping them use that and find ways to engage around what's going on for them, which is brilliant and fantastic, and all those wonderful things that you guys do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, the mission and our topic is being in medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And you've shared a lot of gold with us already so far. And for those listeners who may not have the context of what the word being means, what does being mean for you? What does being in medicine mean for you? How do you use that? And how did you come to have an understanding of it?
Good question. Being for me is...
I think there was actually 3 questions in there.
4.
4 questions. Okay.
Those 4. I heard all 4.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to clarify. There wasn't one question.
Yes, I want to clarify that. So I'm going to kind of break it down. I might have to ask you to repeat the last 2. But the word being for me is presence. That's what I can. If someone's like, what does that mean? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
For me, it's just being present. Because if you are present with your mind, body, soul in this particular moment, I'm not going to worry about what's going to happen tomorrow. Yeah. I'm not going to stress about what I have to do in the next hour and a half, right? I'm just focused strictly here, being with the 2 of you, answering the questions, and just being my true authentic self in however shape or form that comes out.
Yeah.
Without judgment, without feeling like, oh my God, I need this, or I had to do this, or I should have, whatever the situation was, like just releasing all those factors in my head of like, I have to be perfect. And it's just like, no, I just need to be me
right
in this moment in time. So that's what the word being means for me. Now, being in medicine is a little bit tricky for me.
Sure.
Because the lack of what I've seen from being at bedside.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons of my integrity, on one of the reasons why I left, is because the lack of being in medicine, the lack of integrity that we're seeing around healthcare, and the lack of empathy that we're seeing just in general around. And I think me and Jeff, we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago of just the stuff that I saw and the experiences that I've had. It's really challenging because that's like now almost like PTSD. It's kind of like, well, that shit ain't going to change. Why am I going to do it? You know?
Yeah.
And so being in medicine is a great movement for people to really understand, as long as you're seeing the person as a whole, and really hearing what they have to state. I
Yeah.
think being in medicine is beautiful.
Right.
But the concept of that is challenging for a lot of people because, again, like I stated earlier, in healthcare, physicians and or whoever is providers are always telling people what to do. They're not very good at listening to what people have to say.
Yeah.
So being in medicine, like that to me is where the big shift goes, right? It's like seeing that person as a whole. And if they're stating they don't want to take their diabetic medications, I'm just giving an example. And they're like, well, I want to do lifestyle changes. And the doctor's like, no, you need your meds. Why'd you do this? Your A1C is high. There's a lot of different things behind that, where it's just like communication is huge.
Right.
So being in medicine can be very evolving. And it's it's a topic that I love, and it's a topic that I love to talk about. And it's also concepts where we're really hoping, and I'm really praying that more people listen and more people hear this, because this is what's going to change medicine.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Seems like it's hard to be present and aware if we're not even open to listening. If we think we already know it and we've got all the answers, we're not even open to hearing what's over there. We're not actually present in our life. We're present in our preconceived notions or whatever.
And I think that's something that we talk about, right? If we're not being present to what's in front of us and the context that the patients are trying to provide to us, then we're not really looking them as a whole perspective, right? So how can real healing occur if we're not present to what the needs are and what our patients and our team members are saying to us? And, for me, that's a fair amount of what being is how are we showing up to be present, to be those things in medicine, and really the transformative nature that can come from that.
Yeah. Do you mind if I tell you a story on why this is also a little bit of an issue?
We love stories, so go for it.
So a true story that happened to me and my son, he had to get his G-tube replaced in OR because, that's just the child that he needs.
Yeah, right.
And he needs sedatives prior to going to the hospital.
Sure.
And this one particular doctor, again, anesthesiologist, love y'all doctors, and they didn't want to give me. They didn't want to give me any sedatives. And I kept explaining to them, he's scared, he's terrified. Again, this particular physician was just like, I don't want to have this to be a nurse doctor physician. That has nothing to do with this. It's just the story. Okay.
Yeah.
They were very like, you can't do this. This is not out of protocol, or blah, blah, blah. Like, they were just giving me all this loads of things of a no. Right. So I said, fine, I'm going to show up. I showed up. My kid not only hurt himself, we were there for 4 hours waiting to be seen, 3.5 hours. We were in this room. They wouldn't even let me walk him around, right? They're like, no, you have to stay here because that's protocol. Yeah. And I kid you not, my kid ended up almost dislocating his shoulder because he was so mad.
Oh, wow.
I left to get medical advice. And now even the people in the waiting room was just like, oh my God, why they just give you a medication? Like, and they were like, oh, well, we already gave you the 5 or the 10 milligrams of Versed. And I'm like, yeah, he needs anywhere from 25 to 30. And that does not knock him out.
Yeah.
So again, going back to that challenge, that advocacy of like, I've already explained this to you. I've explained my story to 5 different people, and yet no one wants to listen, right? Because they know what's best. And I'm telling you what's going to work for my child.
Right.
And I walked away, and that physician came out and he's like, well, I'm ready for you now. I said, well, I waited 4 hours. Peace out.
Right.
And I walked off.
Yeah.
And so it's hard because it's like, we had to file a grievance and I had to do this whole thing. It was all this paperwork that I don't feel like I needed to do, but it's the principle behind it now.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to be, and now I'm flagged as the bad mom, or the mom that's going to cause trouble. Correct?
Yeah.
I just tell them, I said, that's fine, because that's the advocacy, that part's in me. And so when he did have to replace his G tube, they did listen to me the second time around. And guess what? I told them, they go, your surgery's at 7:30. I said, great. I'll walk in at 7 when anesthesia, the G tube players, the nurse, everyone is circulating around the bed, and I'll come right before timeout. And they go, oh, you need to be here earlier. I said, I don't need to do anything. I'm telling you what I'm going to do for the safety of you guys, of the staff.
Yeah.
And so this time, this particular nurse practitioner, anesthesiologist, I forgot who it was, this other provider, as soon as Rohan came in, they were like, give him another dose. Now, again, another nurse was like, he's going to overdose. And I was like, trust me, if he overdoses, you're in the right spot.
Yeah. Right.
Keep them sedated because they're scared.
Yeah.
When you're taking a child that's autistic out of their environment into a room full of people, smell, they're confined, there's monitors going off, there's people running up and down, nurses screaming, patients going up, it's very overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people understand how much that can alter their trigger. And then, of course, they're going to become violent and or scared and or try to escape.
Right.
Then now my child has become the target of, well, he almost hit this nurse. And I was like, well, I told you he was going to hit the nurse. I warned you.
Yeah.
And I told you he needs to stay. Now, I understand some parents may not want medications for their children. And again, I'm not stating that. I know what works for my child. So if anyone's listening, but I also understand there's some parents that don't want to do certain things. And that's the part where the being in medicine, I really wish can come into play even harder or stronger or faster.
Yeah.
Is because once we go back to those communications, it's like, if I had my child calm and collected, I pre-medicated him, like a nurse can come out, like, let's just break protocol a little bit, you guys. Like, it's okay. Like, you're fine. Like, we're fine. Let me walk around with him. So he's outside in the parking lot. And then as soon as you're ready, you call me. I come in. And this time I bunny suited. And then I walked him in. And then guess what? The surgeon, for whatever reason, decided to use the restroom.
No.
The anesthesiologist was like, where's the doctor? I turned around, like, where's the doctor? She says, I can't touch this patient until there's a doctor in the room. Well, luckily I knew physicians. So I walked out and I saw a physician. I put him in the room. I said, you got a doctor? And the doctor's like, I was like, I'm telling you. And guess what? In that moment, my son wakes up and they're like, he had 50 milligrams of Versed. I'm like, I told you. He's Superman.
Yeah.
They're Superman. Like, they become like they're Superman, And so I'm like, why do we go to OR? This is why we're in OR, so we can use those stronger drugs. So we are able to have, his airway controlled. So we are able to do things in a more controlled way. But getting to that controlled nature is a beast.
Yeah.
And it's very complicated.
Yeah.
Because, like what Jeff was saying, is because people want to do it their way and not in being medicine way.
Yeah. Absolutely. You're showing up, advocating, and showing up, knowing what works for your son and for your kiddos. And then, how that experience that you had the first time, right? That resistance to collaboration, that showing up, right? They're showing up, we got to do it our way. Right.
Yeah.
And that created an experience for you.
Yeah.
Whereas the second time they showed up listening, right? Maybe not as ideally as you would have liked, but they did show up differently, right?
They did.
And that created a different experience for you, right? Could it have still been improved? Certainly could have been, right? But that highlights the example of showing up in a particular way, and how you're showing up has an impact on the patient care, 2, the team, and 3, just the entire experience for everyone around.
Everybody. Everyone around. Yeah. It does make a difference when you come up with a constructive plan with these particular parents. And I can speak for 99% of parents with special needs is, trust us, we know what we're doing with our kids.
Yeah.
You know, like we're the ones that are getting beat up at home. We're the ones that the lack of sleep. We're the ones that are hyper vigilant all day long.
Yeah.
And it's like when we are trying to just have that conversation and we're hitting this, well, that's not how we do it. Well, that's not going to work. Or don't think about that. That's not happening. And I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
Well, then I guess we're not doing we're not going to be getting this particular procedure done until it's certified or we have this in place, right?
Yeah.
And it's very challenging because it's not the first time.
Have you had an experience in medicine where someone has showed up initially, like, tell us what works for you, because we don't quite understand this, or we're not sure exactly how to proceed. Have you had that experience yet?
In my world?
Yeah, with your kiddos, or with no, not yet. Yeah.
No, it's because when I do have it, because what happens is when you do have that plan in place, right?
Yeah.
Then it takes maybe a year or 2 years, something to occur, right?
Sure.
And then that particular staff member is gone.
Yeah.
And then you have to start over.
Right.
And so when you have to start over, it's like, okay, well, I made this with Wendy. Well, Wendy's gone. Okay, can you read her notes? Well, from what date? I'm not going to look back 3 years ago. It's like, I don't remember what date that lady put in. I barely know what day my kid is born right now.
Yeah.
So some days I don't even know what day it is.
Yeah.
Okay? So yeah, it can be very challenging.
Yeah.
It can be very challenging.
Absolutely.
You said earlier.
Yeah, 2 other questions. What were the last 2? Because I didn't answer all.
Well, I actually do think you answered the majority of the others as far as how do you use it in medicine.
Okay.
How does it show up in medicine for you? You said earlier something on the order of a desire to take medicine back to where it was 30 or 40 years ago. What happened? What do you think changed?
Entitlement. Biggerness. I think there's a lot of burnout, especially with nurses.
Yeah.
It's a very, very dog eat dog world. And I really do believe, and I really can state this, like 10 years ago or 11, 12 years ago, nursing was one of the most, was on the higher paying job scale, right? You walk out and it was one of the highest paying jobs out in the market, and it was very valued.
Yeah.
Very valued. And now, like, the value is still there to an extent, right? But now, like, if you look at the pay structure, it hasn't changed.
Sure.
It only maybe has gone up with inflation rates, has gone up a little bit. But I mean, like, when you're talking about some of these CEO startups and things making $300,000-$400,000, especially here in the Bay Area, right? And then an average nurse here in the Bay Area is making $150,000 or $130,000 or $80,000 or whatever the situation is. It's like, it's a lot. Our 12-hour shifts are not 12 hours. They're 14.
Yeah.
Our 8-hour shifts are not 8 hours. They're 10 to 11 sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times is people oversee the exhaustion. I think a lot of times people in management, they're burnt out nurses who went into management and don't really have the skill set to be a manager. And I'm stating that publicly.
Yeah.
Now they went to management and now there's more bullshit. Then they're dealing with the other thing. So now you're taking a burnt nurse from the floor, sending them into management to who wants to change the culture, and now hitting resistance from these higher ups, right? Yeah. And then now middle management they last a year and a half.
Yeah.
Because it's not this it's like this balancing act of like, well, the nurses can do it. The nurses can do it. Let me just add one more thing, or let me add this, or decrease X, Y, and Z. And I really do think that, in other corporations, like in the tech world, they're adapting to what's happening now. So people are getting 6 months paid time off, right? People are getting sabbaticals. People are getting bonuses. Nurses doesn't get any of that.
Yeah.
So I think we have to, when we're going by and when people or nurses go on strike, it's not about like, yes, we want to get paid higher, but it also affects the patient care at the end of the day because
Yeah.
we're tired. They're exhausted.
Mm-hmm. Compassion fatigue and
It's all of it.
all the things, right?
All of it. It comes into big play. And I think that's where the lifestyle 15 years ago, even from me being a nurse 15 years ago to bedside, I left 4 years ago. It's black and white. It's so different from where it was.
Yeah.
And people are coming to the emergency room sicker.
You're right.
They're coming to the hospital sicker.
Yeah. I think we could all agree in terms of, transformation, really top down leadership, administration, owning and agreeing that this is a transformative way to do it. Physicians also a big part of the team, leading the care in that particular way. But how do you work with nurses or with team members and you say, hey, let's just transform your experience? Like how do you find that to be effective for people just to transform the world that they live in?
In at a hospital setting or in their home setting?
Either, but let's stick to medicine right now and just say, yeah, in a medical setting, how does individual ownership play a role, I guess?
It's really understanding what your non-negotiables are. I really do believe like if you need a break, to ask for that advocate for yourself that, hey, I need a break. Advocating for yourself with, if you need the time off, like to get the time off.
Right.
And it really is a challenging world. And, you could sometimes getting time off is very challenging in itself. But I think, when you're at lunch breaks or different things, instead of sitting in the break room, like going outside. And I know that's hard and comes in, but it's free. Like I tell my people, it's free to go outside, right? Yeah. It's free to go for a nice little walk and to get out of that environment and to break it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And, and to really shape how if they're having a really bad shift, it's like, what do you do after your shift where maybe you dance it off? Maybe you play some heavy metal and rock it out in your car.
Right.
I'm just like, there's different ways to go about it, right? But you have to find what works for you. Maybe it's taking a 10-minute nap in your car before heading out, or if there's showers, taking a cold shower before you leave.
Yeah.
But I really believe it just goes back to, what can you do for yourself and releasing the social stigma of what should be done for you? Yeah.
Instead of what should be, what do you need and how do you create that in the space around you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Jeff,
what would you tell a doctor? Because I'm a doctor.
Yeah.
If you were to give some advice to how I could show up or a doctor could show up differently that would make a difference for the nursing team or the crew.
Ask for permission.
I
think that's like the biggest thing I think a lot of physicians forget. If you're asking for permission, it will get felt so much better than being told what to do.
Yeah.
A lot of the times I understand when we're in a emergent situation, there's a lot of telling, right?
Yeah.
There's also asking for permission for like, hey, let's keep this calm. Let's keep this thing. If it's just me and you, Jeff, like chit-chatting with closed loop communication, only me and Jeff are talking, and if there is a request for things, it's like, I think that's like the biggest thing, saying, hey, asking for that permission is key, because I think a lot of times physicians do forget that, there's a big thing that I'm going to state that may trigger some people is that physicians are called Dr. So-and-so. Yeah. You don't hear a nurse saying, hey, Nurse Bina, come to the nurse's station. Yeah. We're called by our first names.
Yeah.
So there's also that hierarchy of like, hey, would you mind like culturally going like, hey, you know what? Don't call me. I'm just saying that, whatever, like Dr. Jeff, whatever it is. It's
Yeah.
like sometimes it's just going back and saying, hey, you know what? Just call me by my first name.
Right.
That alone actually puts away that animosity too.
Yeah.
Right. So, that's been a big thing. I've seen that at bedside a lot when I was at bedside, especially in the ER, where some of these physicians were like, I'm just X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Please don't call me this. Then I've had physicians when, the opposite. They go, that's Dr. So-and-so to you. And so I was like, great. They turn around, they ask me a question. I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. And they go, why? I'm like, I apologize. I didn't hear the nurse in front of my name.
Yeah.
So it's like there's also that egotistical thing about still with some physicians, there's still that, and some nurses, it goes both ways, right? But I think the main one is just like reminding that we're on the same page, we're on the same team.
Yeah.
I
think that's important to acknowledge because it can be, regardless of the title, regardless of the role, right? It could be every person can be driven by their ego that hampers their ability to show up, right? And so regardless if you're a nurse, a physician, a PA, a CRNA, a surge tech, you name it, right?
Yep.
If our ego is driving us to show up that way, then that's how we're going to show up.
Yeah.
And so regardless of the title, it's recognizing that there's a human being over there. I'm a human being. How do we show up for each other where we're going to show up for each other like we would want to, right? Like we want to care and be kind and compassionate. And how do we show up being that regardless of our title?
Exactly.
Even though we have different roles, right? Yeah. And so
thank you and asking goes a long way.
Absolutely. And I think that's important to
come in because
it's really important to recognize that we have roles. And my role is to do something and your role is to do something. And how we're showing up for each other to support those roles, regardless, is ultimately more important.
And I think when we're talking about roles, because that's important too, because there is a role thing on that, right? I can't do certain things a doctor can't do, and a doctor can't do certain things a nurse can do. There's black and white there.
Yeah.
But I think what comes down to that, and when we're talking about being in medicine specifically, is reminding that we are all on the same team.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's about the patient.
Right.
And about what's best for that particular patient. And also reminding that we are a team, meaning thank yous are nice. You're welcome. Or just being nice to one another. Like, I think that's the other thing where it's just like, how many times have I done, and I've had to go into OR scenarios emergently.
Yeah.
I'm not used to that world, I'm not used to it. So I understand of the sterile protocols and I understand certain things, but guess what? It's not my world to be in.
Yeah.
I'm down and dirty in the ER here, know? So just sometimes those friendly reminders is like, hey, don't go over here or don't cross this field, just stay on this side. Like, but in a very integral way versus like, don't be coming in here and messing my stuff up. So I got to redo everything. So I think like also like about that approach too, where, when people are coming into the ER, it is dirty. It is very chaotic. Right. So it's like when we're trying to get them in and out fast or into a higher level of care, depending on what needs to be done, it's like that animosity too of like, well, why wasn't this done? Why wasn't that done? What, like the nitpickings come back. And I think that alone can also trigger a lot of people when it goes back to what you're doing wrong versus with like, you know what? Thank you so much for just getting this patient to the OR and, it's fine. I know his shoes are on and all this other stuff, whatever. Like we'll take care of it,
Right. Yeah.
And I think that also goes down too, where we see this a lot, right? Competition between units. The competition between units. And I think that's, again, it goes back to if we just have compassion back to each other, the thank yous, asking for permission, I think it just goes a long way.
Yeah. I mean, I example for myself, right? I've walked into ERs. I'm a fish out of water in the ER. OR, great. Love to be in the OR. That's fine. walking into the ER to do a consult, first person I seek out is the patient's nurse. And the way I show up is, hey, this is your domain. Help me navigate it. Help me navigate this space. I have found if I show up that way, when I did show up that way, it was much more effective in taking care of my patient than if I come into that space telling people how I'm going to do X, Y, and Z in the space in which they show up and they do their work. And so I just love I love that you're an ER nurse, and that that's a space I feel uncomfortable. so I will give over my role to you to help me navigate how to get all that done in an effective manner.
Yeah, I mean, I quit, i.e. retired / quit 3.5, 4 years ago, but
yeah,
it does feel like home.
Yeah. Well,
The ER still feels like home.
yeah. Well, if I can stay out of the ER, I'm good with that for now.
Same with me.
Awesome.
I think that compassion, as an example, if we have a belief that being compassionate makes a difference in a patient's experience,
Oh, 100%.
then why would we not want to be being compassionate at all times, whether I'm talking to a nurse or a tech or even an administrator of all people?
Yeah.
If who I'm being is non-compassionate, who I'm being is hostile or defensive, it's going to have an impact on patient care.
100%. And I think that goes back down to the acknowledgement of that, right?
Mhm.
Who are you being outside the work? Is
Yeah.
there triggers outside the work, or are you processing what you're seeing?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of the times is that they're not trying to be resentful. They're not trying to be in this, like, what I call a crappy mood. I think it's just when you see, and again, I can only speak because I'm in the ER, when you see tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, and you have no space for that to go,
Yeah.
you do become like jaded. You do become like, well, okay, this comes in. And so when other people are coming down at you or coming at you at different angles, it does become very defensive,
Right.
because they're still processing what they've done. I remember doing this with COVID. I was a COVID nurse in the ER, and we had body bags after body bags, and some of these family members were passing away, or these patients were passing away with no family members, and it was just me and another nurse in the room, right? Holding a phone.
Yeah.
And so, and then you would have to relieve that and then go to the next room with no time in between and say, hi, I'm Bina, I'm going to be your nurse today.
Right.
And so that shape shifting gets to you after a while,
Yeah.
because you haven't processed, what just happened.
Yeah.
And here you are, like, okay, now, and I think, and I'm not going to lie, I became that nurse. I became that grouchy old nurse, when I realized I had to leave. I got in it with a doctor for a mom that had an autistic son. And I also had another case that was very traumatic for me, a 33-year-old that passed away from COVID. And the last thing she said was, I don't want to die.
Yeah.
And so then it's just like, you hear these things, and it's still to this day, like, it still makes me tear up. It's still traumatic.
Right.
And it takes time. So it's not that these nurses or these physicians or the provider, whoever it is in the healthcare system, is trying to be grumpy.
Right.
I just think they just don't have a space for them to process what they've seen.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the silent struggle solutions is so key, is that I give them that space of, like, what are you seeing? What are you handling? What are you doing? Because some of the things are out of their control, and then they take it home or they bring it back.
Yeah. Well, I commend you for the work that you're doing, and it's helping transform medicine by bringing being into medicine, and being is as you show up and who you are and what that looks like for you, and being as patients, as you said, being patient and being in the moment. And so, yeah, appreciate all that.
Silent struggle solution.
Mm-hmm.
Nurse Bina Bendale. If people wanted to learn more about you and what you're up to, how do they contact you?
Well, the website is on the screen below. Honestly, that's the best way to reach me. I am on Instagram and on LinkedIn. On Instagram, I'm Nurse Coach Bina. Everywhere else, I'm just Bina Bendale. But email is best. And it really is. I'm on every social platform. My face is plastered. I don't think it's really hard right now not to find me.
Yeah.
And I also am on YouTube as well. And we're going to be bringing more and more of these teachings onto YouTube, and how can you do compassion fatigue? How can you release some of these things in the hospital and in corporations in general, using that holistic approach so you don't feel crummy all the time.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Bina, for being here. I had an absolute joy just listening to you and hearing your stories, and you're welcome back always, anytime, for sure.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today on the Being in Medicine show, where each week we open the transformative power of connecting our physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual nature to how we show up in medicine.
If you find this conversation valuable, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you or someone you know has a story to share, contact us at beinginmedicine.com. See you next time.